Welcome into our overtime segment here at SportsSource.tv. We appreciate you joining us. Joined by, I never introduced you guys for this. Everybody knows you by this point. But anyway, Chuck Cavaleras is right down there, Josh Ward, Mark Pankratz, Bob Hodge. I'm John Pennington. Welcome in. Just throwing out some random topics for you here, okay? Just the documents that came out this week. I thought one about Fulmer was interesting. In one of these transcripts, there was a reminder that not allegedly, they kind of remember the document. Jamie Allwright, when she was at UT, wrote a proposal to Philip Fulmer saying that here's how you can improve football players' GPAs. She got, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
She got the proposal back, and written at the top was 11-1. That's all anybody cares about. Now they asked Mike Rollo, the late Mike Rollo, longtime UT personality over there. They asked him about it. He said, "Yeah, I seem to remember something about that." And
is that accounting for a Florida loss, by the way, or was that just assuming at the time?
Yeah, the one we're going to look at the Florida games. But here's the. I mean, you look at that. I think Fulmer was absolutely telling the truth. I think that is what everybody was caring about. You know, they care about the record.
Yeah.
But you don't want your coach to say that,
No.
or to write it on a note. I mean, that's pretty rough.
I mean, I think you need to give the lip service to graduation rates and increasing your GPAs and all this stuff. But no, that's exactly right. If Butch Jones next year makes it to the Final Four and he doesn't graduate a single player, how many fans are going to be upset?
Right.
None.
Yeah.
Well, I think maybe some would be, but it would be a minimal. Put it that way. I mean, I think because now the graduation rates are more important than they were, I think, when Coach Fulmer was
Well, you
there.
have the APR reports you have to live
so
with,
I mean,
but
even with that in mind, but I think some fans. I mean, I wouldn't say none. I would say some would be upset.
Here's the thing: if you didn't have a federal lawsuit and all these things falling right on top of each other, would we have had to do a show today that covered all this? No. You know, if there was one of these arrests like every 6 weeks, we'd mention it and move on. But because everything's hitting all at once. So I think that speaks to the fact that most people don't care. I mean, you go back to Tyler Bray throwing
beer bottles
at a car, and I remember the people around here were like, "I'll lay off of him. So what?" And there were people that were mad at the girl who turned him in for smashing her windshield. So I think, the argument 11-1, that's all they care about. I think that's right. I don't think you ever want to say it.
That is one of the most interesting relationships in university is the university side, the academic side, the people that all we want to have great grades, we want to have be a great research institution, to the sports side. Because they have to come, when they talk about a chancellor and they talk about making some of these decisions, they have to come to an agreement. So those conversations, because we're all sports guys, so it's easy for us to say it's all about football, it's 11-1, but there are those people over there that they do have to take up that university side.
Well, absolutely. I think you can make a very good case that it's silly that a university would have athletic teams. I mean, if you think about it, how does that really
just the academic side?
How does that fit with a college? I mean, there was a time when in the 1800s, literally, when you said, "We shall do this for campus glee." We've got to improve the camaraderie on the campus. Now it's a big business. Nobody ever saw it getting there. So I think it is an uncomfortable marriage of the two, because you do have to meet somewhere in the middle, and sports don't want to meet as far on the academic side as the academics, and they don't want to meet as far on the sports side, I don't think.
Yeah, but in Philip Fulmer's comment, I don't think he's wrong, because I can't think of too many phone calls I've gotten on my radio show asking, "Hey, how's the work going for their finals? How's the preparation for that?" In December, it was about getting ready for Northwestern and signing day. It wasn't about getting ready for that.
Yeah, are they missing their study time because they got to go to a final?
I don't think graduation or arrests or any of that stuff matters as much as the win-loss record.
Conzo didn't get pushed out because of his academics. Coaches don't get fired because of academics. What coaches do is they might get suspended from the NCAA tournament for a year, but they don't get fired if they're not doing the academic side. They do if they're not winning.
You're going to get tweeted and tweeted and tweeted because Conzo was not pushed out. Trust me, he was thrown a welcome wagon. The whole time he was here, it was just a bundle of joy. I think daily he received a little care package. All right, it's early and everything can change. And said it on the show today. every coach is going to have issues, especially when you got 100 people on a football team. You're going to have issues. But my question, and I'm going to skip over Dooley and Kiffin because that answer is already yes. Do you think Jones is more of a disciplinarian than even Fulmer, playing off that last one?
I'm gonna go,
I think he clearly is better than Dooley or Kiffin.
yeah, I think he is more of a disciplinarian than Fulmer. I can remember some guys getting in trouble with Coach Fulmer, and it was justice delayed, may not have been justice denied, but there was some movement around.
Coach Fulmer would sit him for a half.
Well, if you remember the one that was the most interesting was one guy, the lesser player got the game.
Yeah.
The little bit better player got the half, and one guy got a quarter. I forget, that was an Arkansas game. We were already doing the show questioning it, so it would have been 2003 or forward.
I think Jones is pretty stern.
I
Seems
do
to be
too.
anyway.
He's pretty quick
Yeah.
to suspend guys.
I think if anything, John, you could make a case there's a rush to judgment sometimes without knowing if they know all the facts, that somebody is suspended and you're thinking, well, now, wait a minute, what happened here? There hadn't been any charges filed.
No, sorry.
So,
I
yeah.
disagree with you.
Well,
I know there's some folks that feel that way, but if I'm the president or the chancellor of the university, that's exactly how I want my coach to handle it. Any kind of charge, allegation, you're suspended until we clear it up.
You have to now. With what's going on, you have to. That's the route they have to take.
And I think that's part of it. I would say Butch Jones probably more of a disciplinarian, partly because he has to, especially with the issues we've discussed today. I don't think there's any choice now.
I think he's also maybe reading too much into it, but he is the son of a cop.
Police chief.
Yeah, I bet that somehow, some way plays into his thinking. How would it not?
Yeah.
I mean, I was raised by a minister. I try and save you guys every week. You're all hellbound. All right. Let me ask you this one. I'll say this one. I doubt that Jamie Allwright, when she was at UT, made it all up. Now, there were 33 accusations. She made 4 of them. She got the kudos for. She was okayed on the 4. The rest of them said that it could have been handled between the two parties better. It was 20 years ago. That's why I think, she probably did put up with some sexual harassment. You're basically the first female hired into that position. And you guys, Chuck, Bob, and myself, know that the business world and what you said 20 years ago, night and day from what you can say and do now.
Yeah.
So I have no doubt, especially in today's environment, I have no doubt she probably was sexually harassed at some point. But here's where I have trouble. I'm all for women doing men's, quote unquote, men's jobs. All right? I think they should be able to do any job that's out there. That's fine. If you can do it, you can do it. This is my struggle, though. If it's sexist not to hire you, how is it not sexist that we have to treat you differently once you're hired? And that's going to tick people off if they hear me say that. But I struggle with that one. Yes, you should be hired to go in there and be a trainer with men in locker rooms, whatever. But if so, don't expect special treatment because you're a woman. If you're doing a man's job, then you are now a man. That's the way it's going to be handled. And if a guy if that had been a male trainer who had been mooned or worse, I don't think there's a sexual harassment suit. I think Peyton Manning, who was pretty spindly at the time, probably gets snapped in half. I think it would have been handled a whole lot differently than a sexual harassment case.
I think there is a difference between what is real sexual harassment and what is offensive. If you're going to be the female in the male world, be prepared to be offended. Me and you are going to tell dirty jokes. Me and you are going to say things, and it's going to offend you. But that's not the same thing as sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is actually going after somebody. And if you're the female in the male world, I don't think you deserve that. You don't need to be in there being hit upon. But at the same time, don't sit there and get upset. If you're sitting here in Mark's seat, me and you are talking, you overhear something you don't like, and you're going to call that sexual harassment? No. That is one of the things that really makes me angry about our politically correct culture, which I absolutely hate, by the way. And I think that plays into it. I actually, at the News Sentinel, was called out because me and someone else were having a conversation and somebody overheard it, didn't like it. I'll say to him now what I said to him then. It was a hand gesture.
Birds were flying.
Yeah.
Guys, your thoughts on it? Mark, let's start with you. You've been around female trainers. Your thoughts on how they're treated? Are they treated just like male trainers, or do you treat them differently?
it's a tough situation for everybody, and obviously, if you're the one that's feeling like you're being assaulted or you're being offended, it's a different style than if it's me or the guys in the locker room feel like we have to adjust because now there's a female in here. You can go along the lines too of saying, well, just because I'm hungry doesn't mean I can go steal something from a restaurant. Same thing of just because you're in there and doesn't mean now I have to change the way that I have to act, or just because this is how we talk, it makes it okay. But it's a tough because every year that I was over at UT, there was a female trainer every year, right. And she saw and was around stuff that she would probably feel as inappropriate, whether it's because guys were talking about stuff that they had on a Friday or Saturday night or things that they did. But I don't think there isn't an easy answer. But to say that the guys have to all of a sudden change the way that they behave, or the female has to just say it's okay, I got to accept this, I don't think either are right. It's tough.
Well, I'm not trying to defend the mooning incident at all. That would be inappropriate. I don't know what you'd call it, but in my world, if she's just a trainer and he did that because he didn't like her, didn't have anything to do with her sex. It's not sexual harassment, it's just harassment. Does that make sense? I mean, if she's going to be a man, if she's doing a man's job, it wasn't like he was coming on to her. There's no call that he was attracted to her.
Well, see, and
or
that's
asking
where that
her
line
out.
has gotten blurred.
Exactly. And you're right to give them the opportunity to do a man's job. That is absolutely right. The question is, how do you define them once they take that job? And does it mean everybody else has to change? Or should they just know this is what it's going to be? As long as you aren't doing what, as you said, overt sexual actions toward that person, sexual statements toward that person. Josh, your thoughts? I'm all over the place.
Yeah, well, one thing I don't know how much does it even get factored in as intent, and I mean you can typically tell, right, the intent in what's said, and to Bob's point, are you talking to somebody else and talking to one person, somebody else hears it, or are you talking directly to that person? Also, bystanders. I don't know what's the role there. If you're watching something happen, I don't know how comfortable people are to step up still and say something. Hey, I witnessed this. I've been in a workplace where I've witnessed something that made me uncomfortable. I don't know that people know what they're supposed to do. Malcolm Saxon, I guess, is playing that role in this Manning story. And obviously, if you read the story from 1996, reading it today, people feel differently about it than they would have reading it 20 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, if you had social media 20 years ago and this had come out then, I don't think we're talking about Peyton Manning's squeaky clean image as Sean King wrote it. I think this would have been a whole different ball of wax if everybody had known this and the current climate had been around then. So I think you're right. It's a different day and age today. Chuck, your thoughts?
It's almost going back to Title IX, that with Title IX, if you don't have women in like a male-dominated environment, it's a lawsuit. If you do have women in a male-dominated environment and something happens,
it's a risk.
Potential, it's a risk and a lawsuit. I think you almost have to have like a supervisor for a supervisor and somebody to say, hey, that's not appropriate. I even go back to like the NFL policy, John, on their locker room that's open. And that makes me uncomfortable when I've been into NFL locker rooms and male and females are in there together. And I'm thinking, I wouldn't want my daughter in here.
Well, the interesting thing there is, if you think, I read something on this recently it started on that topic. It said, but look at this in a broader sense. In what other line of work do people get interviewed while they're naked, while they're changing clothes? And they were calling for, isn't it time we stop this and just bring them out? You get 15 minutes and then everybody comes out for interview sessions. I thought, I've never thought about it, but that is kind of silly if you think about it, that okay, we're going to interview you in the nude. That wouldn't happen in any other
But it started
line of
back
work.
when it was a male-dominated thing. That's the
But it's
the
still
difference.
odd, even if it's just
It is odd, but it didn't seem as odd at the time when
Right.
it was all just guys.
And is it a problem if a male that's qualified to be a trainer with a women's sports team is not given that opportunity because he's a guy?
See, and I don't know the situation on that one. I don't know.
It doesn't seem
I don't
to
know
happen
where.
much.
Mark, you would have a better idea. Male trainers with the Lady Vols, for example.
I'm
basketball
trying to think of some. I'm sure there was an intern or a GA at some point. One doesn't pop in my head just because our schedules are so different, but I'm sure there was one.
I wonder if they're allowed in the locker room. People are changing and that kind of thing, because that's a double standard.
Exactly.
And it's
Exactly.
just as silly one way as it is the other. You know, if we're saying, okay, well, a man can't look at a woman, that's not right. But women can walk in there with men. Well, that's kind of sexist in the way that's phrased. I mean, that idea is sexist.
Well, yeah, the Lady Vols, they're walking around in the training room, sports bras and stuff like that, and just for people to see. I mean, it's so some of that, but I just don't know if there's an actual trainer like there was for women or for men. Seem.
All right, I'll give you the final word since you've been over there. What do you think? What would it'll never happen, but if possible, would it be better if the male sports, all male coaches, all male trainers, done? Women's sports, all women coaches, all women's trainers, done. Would it make for a better work environment?
It would, but also I think it's good for these guys to have to control their emotions and talk in a certain way and act in a certain way, and not just brush it under the rug while they're in the locker room, because then that just filters it and allows them to go and do it and get used to doing it once they get out of the locker room. If they have to learn, all right, there is a female reporter in here because that's what's going to be like in the real world,
right?
Then I have to understand I can't say this whenever I feel like it. But I think so many times we try to put our athletes into a certain box, and then all of a sudden they get out into the real world, and that's the box of the SEC sports is not reality. And they get out and they fail. And I think having the women around and teaching them and helping them learn, that's part of the educational process of a university, and I think it's good for them.
Great point. Yeah. We'll finish it with that. Nice job, Mark Pancratz. You win that round. All right. We will see you next Sunday, 11 a.m. WATE 6. Hopefully, Smokey won't get picked up by a dog catcher. There'll be no other nightmare scenarios this week, and we can just talk about sports. That would be great. We'll see you next Sunday.